I thought we could start this way. Why don't you tell us where we are?
Okay. So we are in Holyoke, Massachusetts. We're in the Skinner Chapel, which is part of the United Congregational Church of Holyoke. And the Skinner Chapel was built in the early 1900s. I'll add the date later on. And it was pretty much donated by William Skinner of Skinner Silk and Fabrics. And so it remains here as a legacy to their family and obviously as a place of worship.
Okay.
And it is quite fantastic. We're going to actually, we did show some scenes and we're going to see a little bit more.
Okay, so what my thing is, why do you think, and maybe I could give it a shot, but why don't you say, do you think this is important for Holyoke and for us and for artists to think about the history of churches?
Well, I mean, I think it's important because, first of all, it's a remarkable edifice. It's quite stunning in its beauty, and its significance is, possibly one is that Holyoke 100 years ago was a very different place, in that the industry that was here was really in its peak. It was bustling. There was a lot of work. Yeah. There was paper being made. There was textiles being made. And so this place is a bit of a representation of that. I mean, among other things, again, as a place of worship, a place where currently a lot of different people of different backgrounds actually currently come together, and that's a very good thing.
And I think that if artists function well within the community, we're going to ask them indirectly through this show and stuff, what do they think of this? So the artist that I invite is a great painter of the community. And so, he's going to arrive any second, and we'll welcome him. Brooke Schnabel is a painter and a talented artist. Brooke Schnabel, everybody. Thank you for coming, Brooke, really, because we want to have that good conversation that you're capable of. And Denis, Brooke Schnabel.
Hi, Denis. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me here.
You can have a seat.
Yeah, we give you a seat. And we're amongst the congregation in the sense that we're in the pews and not up in the...
Just absolutely gorgeous.
Exactly.
This is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Great.
So, this is, a very casual conversation in this fantastic place. So, Ed, I defer to you this time.
Brooke, I partly felt good about offering this chance for you to say something about your work and yourself, but also felt like you have been a very successful artist within the the New England. I always think everything is from New York, in New England, but that you've also decided to take stock and understand how you fit your life in the world and stuff. And essentially, that's what this place has been about. How do people find their way? And as an artist, has that, being here does it mean anything to you to think about this as well as your career?
To think about religion, you mean, or just to think about
being here in this space, this beautiful?
It, not us, right? He said religion. we were going to get to that. So dive right in.
This has been a persistent question for me all my life, pretty much since I was a child. And I was raised in a religious background. I was a Catholic. I was an altar boy. I believed in the transubstantiation of the Eucharist, and so. But I consider myself a secular person now, and meaning has been a very important pursuit of mine, trying to figure out a purpose, trying to figure out a meaning, which is what this building is all about.
Yeah, that's right.
I suppose that for me, culture has been the means, the avenue for me to find certain meaning. And that was why I ended up doing art, I believe. But it's still a pursuit for me. I have no idea what the true meaning is. I'm still trying to figure it out.
That's what I thought. And I think the churches are working on that themselves, not just us, trying to figure out exactly how they fit in and how they fill needs when people who were raised very much as I was. I don't know, did you have a religious youth?
Not really.
Okay, we're not talking to you anymore.
Wrong answer, clearly.
Yes, can you fake it right now?
Well, for the next episode,
All
I'll
right,
fake
yeah,
it. Okay, how's that?
but you still found yourself enamored by this place.
Oh, absolutely. Again, and you know, actually, I want to make the connection with religion and art, because art, and I know, as you know, because I read your artist statement, you know, there's the correlation of, well, what exactly is the meaning of art? What is the purpose of art? Art is a luxury. You said that in your artist statement, and that totally resonates with me, because I had an artist statement that I wrote at one point that said something along the lines of, I should be lucky, you know, I'm blessed to be able to have the time and the ability to set aside to actually paint. I mean, that is a luxury. Other people, you know, other people basically are looking for a way to you know, to feed themselves daily. And here I am, it's like, well, I'm a little bored. Let me see if I could paint something. That is a luxury. And I even went as far as saying, you know, if I should stop painting, then let my hands be cut off. So, you know, a little drama in my artist statement. But anyway, but I was, you know, this whole connection between what is the meaning of art, what is the meaning of religion. I mean, that somehow coming together in this fantastic place of beauty really is, I don't know, it seems very appropriate. So where am I going with this?
You're saying,
Thank you.
in some, the church actually put active use to art to create their sense of meaning to their pastors. You know, that was the way they do it. Don't you think that that's part of when you even do a painting? That you're trying to convey something of yourself in the painting. You did a lot around Northampton.
I did, yes.
Yeah, so didn't that somehow, weren't you off, isn't it a kind of offering?
I'm not sure I would qualify it as an offering, if I'm actually honest with my pursuit of art. I think that it is, one, to try and make myself feel somehow significant within the world, to have a purpose, a meaning of something that I did in my life, and that it is a way of kind of creating a permanence to my life, because when I'm gone, there's going to be something left behind that I can leave behind, and will be a part of me.
Right.
I think those are two motivating factors for a lot of human behavior: impermanence and insignificance. When we look back on our life, what did our life mean?
Right.
Did it have any significance? And we're all preoccupied with death and dying, so, I mean, I don't want to get too heavy here, but
No, please.
if,
Give it a shot.
you know, I mean, I think it's pretty universal that we all don't, there's a biological imperative that we survive. We are biological entities, so we want to eat and find a place of comfort and then satiate ourselves again, and our imperative is that we don't want to die. But we have this symbolic consciousness that thinks about the infinite, and it creates a conflict for us. So I guess I kind of feel like, you know, if I'm honest, those are the more motivators for doing art.
I think that's pretty powerful. How do you think about, like, legacy? I mean, you're leaving behind a body of work.
I am, and I've thought about that a lot, but what to me, I'm doing a narrative in my work. You know, I'm just saying, here's been what influences me as I go through.
Yeah.
But when I came back here and I listened to the organ and I tried to realize that I have such deep family roots, grandfather Baptist minister and all that stuff, that underneath it all is a deep teaching of the afterlife or the significance of life. And, you know, I had to explain to my dad long time ago that probably I didn't believe that there are an awful lot of people who've never been saved in hell. But at the same time, I understand that in this veil of tears, people are looking for something transcendent. And to me, when I look even at your work and my work, I hope that some degree of it is transcendent, that it somehow takes them out of what they usually see to see something more, either shared by somebody else or understood by somebody else. I think your work shows that, and I certainly feel yours is. It's an effort of mine, but I don't kid myself into thinking that I know something more than the presence of that beauty being somehow transcendent, to know, to be able to recognize it. And so it's, to me, when I look at your work, I go, it's easy to see that he's in touch with something other than just what it looks like.
Well, I kind of, I think I am right in line with you, Ed, on this, but it's been a recent discovery for me, because I got really nihilistic there for a while, particularly during the pandemic and even before that. You know, as a protagonist in life, I kind of felt like we're living in a disinterested universe. It's not terribly interested in human affairs. That's my secularism here coming in. Yeah. And if you know, and this is just my opinion, but if that's the case, you know, then if it's disinterested, how are we connected somehow? And we are connected because we're part of nature, and this goes back goes into this these transcendentalist thinkers that I really am a fan of.
Right.
And they think a lot about how the universe, they're deists, they don't believe in, I don't know, am I going off here too much on a tangent?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I mean, again,
I think he's going wild.
yeah, I think, you know, because tangents are good. They're always good.
All right,
What
anyway.
I'm saying is, you have to understand, part of the reason why I thought you would really help us in getting people to think the way you think an artist thinks is because you've been rethinking it a lot in the last couple of years.
Yes.
Whether you were going to be able to paint full time, whether there is a thing called a legitimate market, you know, for the work, and do you have to be a marketer to exist? So this is what you've been thinking of. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I also connect with the whole, you know, when I work, and I haven't actually been active painting, but I have a body of work, and for me that is kind of my legacy. I don't have children, so in a way I think of my paintings as, if anything is going to survive in my stuff, this is a topic Ed and I actually talk about occasionally, and we met actually talking about this topic. You know, what happens after we're dead? I mean, there's the paintings, there's our furniture, there's our clothing, a lot of stuff will just be thrown out. God forbid my stuff would end up in an estate sale. Those things are very depressing. But I do go to estate sales. But the you know, for me, when I look at my paintings, I think, okay, this thing will clearly survive me unless, you know, I actually bury or burn my own paintings, which I don't intend to at this point. We'll talk about that.
You gave up on that?
No, we'll talk about that. That's still that's a
Yeah,
long topic.
you know, didn't I tell you that we had a joke about the idea that we would have 12 painters who really are at the end of their career with their garages and storage bursting, and we would have a Last Supper.
And then we would burn
and then we would burn our art and say,
Yes.
we're just happy to say we had a Last Supper with the idea of God. You know that this is the thing I think is important to understand. You know the movie Beckett, right? Okay, that story came up for Hollywood to do, but in the original play, it wasn't that they had to kill the archbishop, you know, because he was defending God, the archbishop, who I think it was played by O'Toole or something. He said, I don't have to defend God. That seems like such an odd thing to have to do. He said, my job is to defend the idea of God. And so to me, that's what we're really doing. We're offering in our work, and I see it in yours so easily. You're giving them a piece of transcendence within this life, not just the possibility of heaven, which
and that again,
don't worry about
the
much.
Correlation with this chapel.
Yeah, I get that feeling here.
This was left
absolutely
as a
do.
legacy by Mr. Skinner.
Yeah.
So this is a monument to faith, but also to power. I have to say, this is pretty ostentatious, and this is a statement about power.
No question about it.
So, and this is here, you know, 100+ years later, and
But it strikes as beautiful, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Why don't you talk about that? When you walk in, what catches your eye?
The stone and the architecture and the organ and the stained glass window. I mean, and the height of the ceiling. It's just remarkable.
Well, why can't people come back just for that? They don't seem to be crowding the churches anywhere, not just in Holyoke.
He wants you to answer that.
I know he does, but I have no idea what the answer to that is.
Don't
I
ever
wish
ask
I
me
did.
Why don't they come?
I could move mountains if I knew the answer to that question.
The minister here, Winston, right, is a great man in the service of this place. Maybe we have to check with him later, but
Yeah,
we
will.
They're not crowding here, even for the best shepherding job that he can do. But to me, it's transcendent just walking in. Something happens to me when I come in this place.
Yeah. You know, if I'm honest, you want me to be honest with all
Oh, no,
this?
never.
No, that we don't accept.
We have standards.
Please.
Okay, I'm
What?
not going to pull any punches here. My feeling is that meaning for us is, again, related to this impermanence and insignificance, and that the way we get around that is we create projects for ourselves. Now, this isn't really my
I
thinking.
think you're right.
This isn't really my thinking. It's another philosopher's thinking. But we create these projects, and he calls them immortality projects.
Okay.
So that fits in with this church. This is an immortality project. It's trying to connect us and give us more permanence,
Right.
give more significance to our life, and more meaning. And that, you know, this guy, Ernest Becker was the guy's name, and he said that culture is really a collision of all of our immortality projects coming together to create what we know as culture, which I thought was a pretty interesting idea.
No, I think it is. In fact, if you hadn't mentioned his name, I was going to say, don't you think you should? Because it's a pretty good thought.
Yeah,
You know?
and you know what? He's a little darker. He goes in and says, you know, like all of these immortality projects, they're actually illusions that we create for ourselves. He would consider religion, culture, art, passing on our DNA to our progeny, all these ways that we try and find immortality within our lives. He would consider those as illusions, but necessary illusions for us to remain healthy. So, and
Good
I
point.
think there's a lot of
Good
truth
point,
to that.
yeah.
Healthy and alive.
And alive.
No, I think that's
Because
true.
yeah, there's a lot of artifices, it's another way of describing it, that we create, you know, and it could be religion, government, but they are ways that we actually get along, and we've developed culture and we've developed civilization in a way that we all agree on these illusions or artifices, so that we can walk down the street and not be worried to be
Right.
just attacked randomly.
Right.
Which
Although
is-
that does
I
occasionally.
was going to say now
does happen.
that those presumptions are being tested
Yeah.
every day.
And the transcendence said, you know, that is my exit from the nihilism, because it is something that I feel connected to
Right.
this universe, even though I don't have the spiritual belief of a religious.
So
you know,
this is how
religion.
you came out of the last few years,
Yes,
thinking that.
I
Yeah, that
felt
was
like,
important. I
okay, so
understood
you know,
that.
there is an order to things. The universe
Wow.
has an order, it has a structure, and I'm a part of it. And so, you know, and I actually feel that when I do painting. I'm sure you have felt that too, Dennis. You kind of lose track of time.
Yeah.
You get completely sucked into this
And
activity.
it's hard for me to achieve that, and you know, but when I am in that moment, it is pretty amazing. I
Yeah,
have to
you
say.
felt it too, I'm sure, Ed.
You know that the difference between sculpture and painting is so profound on that level for me, because I started in stone. And when you start working on a piece of stone, for me, it's always wrong until it's right. Because you keep going bang, 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 and you go, oh, it's right. You know, so there's a moment where you find it, whereas when you're painting, you're adding, you know, and you're creating in a different way. But you have to be more patient, I think.
With sculpting?
I think so, but anyhow, what do I know? I'm untaught, if that matters. If that matters. Does that matter to you?
That you're not
That I'm not taught.
that you're not schooled.
No, because I've talked about art. If it can't be taught, it's not really worth it. If
I
it's,
kind of have no opinion on that. I mean,
yeah,
I don't have an MFA, and I think it kind of shows when I hang out with MFA people,
that's me.
because it's different. Like there's a
You
different
don't know
language.
that about me.
Yeah, no, I know that. That was one of the first things that came up. We have that in common. We're semi-schooled.
I have an MFA,
Well,
but
I'm
in
going to
film.
have to join that club because I'm semi-school too.
Oh,
Yeah.
there we go.
Yeah, it's good. Well, look, you know, I think we're doing great, but
Yeah.
I don't want to minimize how difficult it is in the world we're in right now to continue to believe in something.
Absolutely,
Right?
you have.
And that's why for the last couple of years you could struggle more than before, because the presumption that the work has value, other people have it, it matters.
No matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you're welcome here. It's important to me to be able to say that there is not just one way to interpret the scriptures, that the scripture is what some people used to call the child of the community. It's the community of faith, the Hebrew and Christian communities, form the stories of the scripture, and they are not necessarily literal stories, or they're not history remembered. One might say that where we get our narrative or authority for doing what we do, some of it comes from the biblical tradition and the stories. Some of it comes from the collective history of the Hebrew tradition, Christianity, and some of it comes from how the group of people who meet in this space, how they interact with each other, and what it is that they feel like is their mission at this one particular place and time to interact, to enact in this community. I've always thought that the worship space, in many ways, it certainly influences and determines the style of worship itself. I mean, although in this space we have, like the jazz band, some occasionally jazz stuff in here, but there's a really good organ that's in this space, and a nice piano, and so it's a mixture of music styles that we may use here, but again, it's you can't get out of this space when you look to see the vaulted ceiling and the columns, and it was made to replicate and look like some medieval cathedral somewhere in Europe, and so it has that sense of transcendence about it, as like our other worship space, which is larger than you've been in, is larger than this, really has, in a way, more than this does, because of it's just different. But this particular space has, the cornerstone for this was laid in 1909, and it was finished and dedicated in 1912. But this space does something to one, I think. It does to me when you enter the space itself. It has something like, wow, a sense of transcendence that's here. And so one of the things that happens in the gathering of the worship is relying upon that sense of transcendence.